All right, and we're back to the Marco show, as he calls it. So, subject of the day: how do you qualify your clients? So, Marco, I think a lot of people are curious. They maybe know the basics. Oh, you need a pre-cal or whatever from the bank. You told in the French version that's pretty much worth garbage. So, how do you qualify for real?
I didn't say garbage. It's just say they have to be.
Paraphrase.
You have to be careful of how to use a pre-approval and when to use it. I mean, obviously for the client itself, it's not like garbage because at least you know your capacity.
Sure.
Like
So it's informative.
yes, exactly. So to the reason why I chose that subject this morning is because one of the broker had contacted me this week. He had a client, and he told me, listen, the client she can afford, let's say, to pay a rent of I don't remember the amount, it was quite a big amount, and at that rent, for that amount, you could probably afford like a mortgage. I mean, yeah, it's very simple, like very simplest as a deduction. Like, yes, it's true. I mean, but
we wish it was that easy.
it's not that easy, right? Because you have the other component to take care of and to look for. I mean, obviously, you have to look at all the the debt of the client. You have to also be able to understand the client, who's the person is facing you,
Yeah.
what's the need, like short term, long term, mid term. In her situation, basically, she was in a rush to find let's say, to find some place to stay. It was like not I would say an emergency, but it was for like beginning of July, so it was quite urgent. Also, she was still studying, so she was getting a diploma to improve her revenue. She had a job, a good job, and in a situation, it was a good way. It was a good client, a good potential client, but not for now. I would say maybe lower, maybe a year, 2 years max. I mean, to look to buy something, because she didn't have enough revenue as we speak, and also it was not in the mindset to buy something right away. So she wanted to settle down. I mean, with her job, with also with the whatever she was going through. So that's why I think it's important for the broker to understand the person who he's talking to. I mean, then when I say qualify the client, that's one component. I mean, you have to understand what they're looking for, like short term, mid term. You have to understand also, like when you talk about rent. Yes, I mean, everybody can afford, maybe not everybody, but some people they can afford, let's say, a rent of 2000, 2005, 2000, 2002, especially if they want to buy new. Uh, but there's other expenses you have to look for. When we talk expenses, we talk about ratios. When the ratios are GDS, TDS, I mean, obviously, very interesting subject for everyone, but that's the reality. I mean, if somebody wants to buy a property, you have to look basically at the ratios. So you have to look at what they can afford as a mortgage, municipal tax, school tax, condo fees if they buy a condo, the gross revenue, and for, let's say, the GDS, that's for the GDM, but for the TDS, you have to add on top of that like the personal debts. I mean, you have a car loan, have a credit card, student loan, because more and more now we see that,
Sure.
like student loan. So all this has to be taken in consideration for in order to qualify the client and to make sure that they can afford to pay a payment or pay a mortgage.
So when you talk about debt, so you're talking about different types of debts and student loans and so on. But is there a debt that's looked at from a lender's perspective in a more, oh, this one is bad or this one is more risky, or are all debts the same? It's all about the ratios.
It's all about ratios. Obviously, what the clients have to be careful is when you say bad debts. When you say bad debts, is like all debts with high interest rate. So basically, let's say like credit cards. You have a credit card, let's say from a store, let's say from the Bay, from the Brick, whatever. I mean, the rate of these cards are very high. So that you would be careful. But at the end of the day, when I say it's high, because when you calculate the ratios, okay, so you have to take the monthly amount in consideration. The monthly amount of each, let's say, each debt can be like a credit card. Credit card technically would take 3%. There's a line of credit, there's the loan, but at the end, when you compile all the, you make the sum up, you sum up all the debts, the monthly payment, that's what we take in consideration to calculate the ratio. So obviously, if you have uh, cards with higher interest rate, so they just put a lot of pressure on your debt ratios, because obviously the monthly payment is slightly higher than if you have, let's say, a regular card. So I mean, obviously, if you have to pay cards, I mean, if you have just to pay cards to pay your debts, all the bad debts have to be paid first. I mean, but at the end of the day, when you calculate the ratios, it's the debt. Whatever it's on the credit bureau, that's what we take in consideration to calculate the ratios.
That makes sense. So I think I would ask basically. So there's, since we spoke, pretty much all debts are the same, but when it's time to pay them off, pay the bad ones first. But what if basically? But no. First question, actually, even more urgent than that. You were saying 3% payment on everything. Is that for when you have a balance on it and when you have your balance free?
It's always, let's say somebody has a credit card limit at 10,000.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you don't use a card, but it's zero, that we put to
So you don't put
calculate the ratio.
3% of that because
No, you put
okay.
3% on the balance of the card. Let's say
Okay.
if you have $1,000, where we take $30.
True. So, but wait a second, because what if you do me a full qualification, and then I have all my credit cards at zero, so you don't put anything for that on ratio, and I barely pass, and then a day before the notary, I max out on my credit cards. Would that affect something?
That's
Because
why
you get what I mean? Because
that's
it's fully accessible,
my-
right? It's not like a personal loan I have to apply for. It's right there. I can use it.
that's why before when you ask me what's the value of a pre-approval. Pre-approval, technically, you take a picture
Yeah.
of a situation on a specific day. If you look at obviously somebody will declare, I make, I don't know, $80,000 a year. I have 2 credit cards. He had 0. I have a loan. I have $200 a month. Okay, so then you make a pre-approval based on these numbers. But then when it's time to approve the file, then you look at the revenue. It's not 80,000, it's 77,000, and he did maybe a 75 or 74,000 the year before. So then, depending on the lender, you have to do an average. There's different ways to calculate the revenue depending on which lender you're using for the mortgage. Why was using different lenders? It depends on the profile of the client, and also depends on the product he's looking for. That's for the revenue. Then for the debt, obviously, if you have 0, let's say today a client tells me I have 2 credit cards at 0, but then he decides, I don't know, to go buy furnitures or,
Right.
and one day when it's time to approve the file, at the $10,000 credit cards, he has 6,000 or 7,000 on the credit card. So obviously the ratios are different. So the way usually when I do a pre-approval for a client, usually I'm very conservative in the sense that I'm trying to, even the cards at 0, I always put a number on the card because you never know what's going to happen.
Okay.
So, and I never maximize also the debt ratio. So that's the way I work. Some brokers, it can work differently. Sometimes, to please the client, they're going to maximize everything. They're going to put everything at 0. They're going to maximize, let's say, the revenue. They're going to maximize. When I say maximize, they go according to what the client says.
It's pure fraud.
No, it's not fraud. I'm just saying because sometimes, because I've seen in the past clients, I mean, technically telling me, oh my God, your pre-approval is so low. I have another broker that give me like, I have higher with another broker.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
I said, listen, I don't understand, but you might be surprised when you submit a file for an approval, because the way I do it, yes, it's maybe a bit lower, but at least I know if one day you have you find something, you need an approval, you won't get back to me saying, listen, your pre-approval wasn't good, or
Yeah.
So I always try to be like reasonable and realistic also when I do a pre-approval. But like I said, it's only a picture of a specific day, a specific moment. Things can change. People can change job. They can improve the revenue. They can, they can lose their job. Like a lot we saw
For sure.
a couple of years ago with COVID, when it first started with COVID, a lot of business shut down, people losing their jobs, or they had the CERB and everything. So things can change like rapidly, So, but technically, that's it's okay, but I mean, it's not a guarantee you get an approval.
Definitely. I think the last question I would have for you is, because I know we also have brokers listening in. What would you say for a qualification is the regular delays from A to Z?
To qualify,
Yep.
to pre-qualify a client.
No, because pre-qualify, we said it's click, click, it's a picture, and there you go, right? But
But,
the
I
actual
mean-
qualification, you're qualified. Now we can start working on your file, and
But I mean, I think I see two parts on your question, because yes, I mean, pre-qualification is one thing. You have pre-approval and your approvals. Pre-qualification usually, yeah, you have that, like some certain banks they announce it like you can be pre-qualified in 60
okay, yeah.
seconds.
Okay.
That's worth nothing. I mean, basically, then you can have a pre-approval. A pre-approval usually, certain banks gives pre-approval. You have a letter from the bank. Sometimes you need though to have a consent to pull out the credit bureau,
Sure.
so they have a better idea exact of the profile of the client. But there again, you have to verify the revenue and verify also like certain other documents you have to verify, and the approval. But the approval there, I mean, once you have everything on hand, you want to say everything, all the documents. That's why also it's important to, when the broker works with his client, he has to inform the client, like from or he refers to the mortgage broker, and the broker like get in contact right away with the client. But at least the real estate broker should know the basic, what the client needs, to prepare to submit a file for, let's say, for a lender or to a mortgage broker, because everything starts from the moment the bank or the lenders will get all the documents. They won't look at the file; they don't have the full documents.
Oh wow.
So that's why it's important to be well prepared and to have everything in order. And once you have everything in order, things can go fast. But most of the time, what delays, let's say, the delay to analyze a file, it's because the bank, the lender, they don't have all the documents like in the first hand, like right away.
So the misconception, which is usually the lender is slow, but it's because he asked you for a document and you still haven't signed it. You're like, oh, he doesn't need it right now. I'll do it later. Is that usually
Part
what
of it,
happens?
yes, but also, I mean, it depends. When it's a high season, sometimes we've been notified by lender. Let's say they have 96 hours, 72 hours. Like like a few years ago, we had lenders. They had 2 weeks backlog. I mean, the sense that when we're receiving, let's say, a promise of purchase from, let's say, a broker, and they are giving us like 10 days to have approval, we said, listen, it's not possible. 10 days would need at least 15 to 21 days. Because some lenders, they even had 17 days. Some lenders, one lender in particular, I won't name the lender, but I think there was 1 month. Wow. Because they were short of staff. Because you have to understand also, like with COVID, like when it happened, everybody was in working home mode. So a lot of them were not prepared for that. So they just to prepare all this.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of lenders were also short of staff, so they caused a lot of delay in the transaction, like I would say the first months. After that, I mean, they adapted after a while, but then at the beginning was the delay was caused not only because obviously we didn't have the documents, but it was also to adapt to a new reality for the lenders.
Very interesting. Julian, do you have any questions? So the marketing staff is okay. Perfect. Well, Mark, thanks so much for your time. Always a pleasure. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you very soon. Take care.
Thank you.